Welcome, everyone. My name is Cindy Montgomery, and I'm serving as today's facilitator for this session on WUE, or Western Undergraduate Exchange. Before I hand this over to today's panelists, I want to go over just a few housekeeping items. You might wonder how to ask questions. Today, we're going to be using the Q&A button that you'll see on your screen. You can put in questions at any time, and then our panelists will address those after their presentation. Your camera and microphone have been turned off, so just please be aware that your panelists cannot see you or hear you. After this, there's great sessions happening throughout the rest of the day, including the college fair. So we hope that you'll join additional sessions today. And finally, this session is being recorded. So if you'd like to revisit this session or any that you've seen today or not able to attend, you'll be able to go to the strivescan.org / virtual fairs website and get all the information that we shared with you today. So with that said, I'm going to turn over today's session to our two very knowledgeable panelists. They'll introduce themselves and then get started. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Give me just one moment here while I share my screen and presentation. Hopefully you are all able to see that. Our presentation today, Understanding WUE and Creating Out-of-State Options for Students, specifically students from Hawaii. My name is Tyler Siegler. I'm an Assistant Director of Admissions at Northern Arizona University. I am regionally based in Oahu. In fact, I live next to the Central Fire Station downtown, so I need to apologize ahead of time if you hear any sirens. It's just the fire truck. I promise I'm okay.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kim Dela Cruz Kelly. I'm with Washington State University. I'm an assistant director with new student programs and an admissions counselor with our Office of Recruitment. And I also live on island. So I'm out here on the west side in Ewa Beach on Oahu. And I am looking forward to sharing some knowledge with you all about the WUE program. All right, so our first slide is about, why would you want to go out of state? There are a lot of different reasons. Sometimes you're looking for a specific major that maybe is less impacted if you were to go out of state. Maybe you're looking for a specialized program that may be not offered on island. Affordability sometimes also plays a role, and we'll get into why WUE can help with that in a few slides. There's also opportunities for internships with out-of-state companies. So being able to get some of that out of state experience and then bring it back to your hometown if you choose to come back after going out of state for school. Also building awareness in other parts of the country. So kind of learning about the different cultural aspects of different places that you've lived. I think it's oftentimes a really cool way to start learning about those cultural competencies that are going to be really important after you graduate with your degree and enter the workforce. And then also gaining some independence. I think it's really easy for us to rely mom, dad, or any of the supporters that we live with to help us kind of grow up and do the adulting thing. When you go out of state, some of that you're going to have to learn on your own, and you really gain a sense of independence when going out of state.
So as we really dive into the presentation, I'm going to try to give you some very simplistic definitions of some of the words that you may hear us throw around. Kim and I use these every day, but we want to make sure that those of you who don't use these words in your everyday life have at least a basic understanding of what they are. So very quickly, reciprocity, just two people, two states, two institutions sort of giving each other something equal. So in this case, we're primarily talking about students from various Western states. Residency, when we are referring to that, we are referring to which state you legally live in. So just because you live in Washington doesn't necessarily mean that you've given up your Hawaii residency. You may still be registered to vote, paying taxes, all that good stuff for Hawaii, even if you're spending 9 months out of the year in another state. Scholarship retention, really the ability to keep your scholarship after you've earned it. So nearly every university in the country offers scholarships of some type, And most of us have something you need to do in order to keep that scholarship, oftentimes a minimum college GPA. Test optional and test blind, these were becoming pretty big buzzwords before COVID, and since COVID, they've sort of taken over the whole conversation. Test optional is just that. You do not necessarily have to send in your test scores, but you could if you want. Now, you're also going to want to ask a university that if you choose to send in your test scores, can they only help or could they hurt you as well? So you get to choose this. So like at NAU, if your test scores don't help you, we just completely ignore it. But another university may say, no, you chose us to send a scholarship, or your test scores, excuse me, we are going to take that into consideration. Test blind is just that again. If you send in the scores, the university is not going to consider it. The vast majority of schools across the country have gone at least test optional. Only a small handful are absolutely requiring test scores, especially since on most parts of the island and most schools on the islands, it's not even possible to take the exam right now. Just know you're going to be okay. Renewable scholarships. So you're going to want to ask when you get offered a scholarship, not only from a university, but any private or third-party scholarships as well. Is this good for 1 year? Is it good for 2? Is it good for 4? And is there anything that I have to do in order to keep that scholarship if it is renewable? You may need to reapply. You may need to take a certain number of credits, but you're going to want to ask if its value goes beyond the first year. Superscoring is referring to ACT and SAT tests. Again, this is not likely to play into the conversation nearly as much as it was even a year ago. Superscoring is essentially saying that you took either the ACT or the SAT twice, and they're going to take the highest subscore of one section from test A, the highest subscore of section B from the second test, combine those together to generally give you a higher score. It's fairly common to see schools do that with the SAT, a little less common with the ACT because the SAT, they literally just add numbers together. The ACT is a more complicated average, but a question to ask. Major restrictions. So we're going to go into this a little bit more, but some universities do not allow WUE or other scholarships to be used for every major. Or you may earn a scholarship from a third-party organization that says, you can go to any country or any university in the country, but you have to major in environmental engineering. So you want to make sure that those scholarships you're earning are good for the major that you're interested in. Stacking, we'll often talk about stackable or non-stackable. So sometimes you can earn a scholarship and we'll say it is stackable with other scholarships or financial aid, meaning you're just adding those on top of one another. But there are some scholarships that aren't stackable. They're specifically laid out in the rules that you can get this scholarship or this one, but not both. Or it may be that scholarships are specific to certain parts of your college expense. So scholarships that admissions offices give you are generally good for tuition only. That means that it can't cover your housing costs. So if you get sort of quote unquote too many at wow, the weekend, and I am struggling with my words here. If you get too many tuition scholarships only, there may be no tuition left to pay. So FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid, for those of you who are seniors, this opened up on October 1st. This is need-based money rather than merit-based money. And there are 3 types of money that you can get. Grants, which are generally speaking free money. You don't have to pay these back. Loans, you have to pay back, though there are some loan forgiveness programs. Loans through the FAFSA are generally a better deal in that they have better repayment and lower interest rate than private loans, but not necessarily. And work study money is you get a job on campus and the university writes you a check and you can do whatever with that paycheck that you like. Universities like to hire work study students because while you still make the same amount of money, the federal government is paying the majority of your paycheck and the university is only paying a small portion of it. So it saves us money even though you see the exact amount in your weekly or bi-weekly paycheck.
All right. So, as you all probably saw, if you checked out the schedule of our college fair today, there are lots of colleges to choose from. So, we want to talk a little bit about how do you start that college search. We definitely recommend that you make a list of your negotiables and your non-negotiable aspects of things that you're looking for in a college to either put it on your list or for sure you're not going to put that college on your list. Just taking a list at just taking a look at today's list, it could be overwhelming to see so many different options for you. But at the same time, it's a really good way for you to explore and actually think about things that are negotiables and non-negotiables. So, what may be a good school for me or for Tyler may be totally different than what's a good school for you. So we recommend that you start with at least 5 things that you know for sure you want to have in your college experience. So, for example, for me, when I was looking for a college, I wanted to be on the Pacific Northwest side, so the west side of the country, out of state, and I don't have any family in that area. So I really wanted to make sure that I had a really great community and a family oriented type of community when looking for colleges. I was looking for those types of resources. So that was a non negotiable for me. I wanted to make sure that that was at my school, right? So some of the things we want you to take a look at when looking at different schools are academics. Of course, this can't be the only thing you're looking at. Many different colleges offer similar majors or pathways to the career that you're interested in. Um, Maybe you're looking at the location of your schools, the size of your school, and what types of academic class sizes they offer at those schools. That's also kind of related to the student and faculty ratio. Things that you can get involved in student life. Are you someone who really is interested in attending sporting events, and what type of sporting events? Are you really interested in joining a specific type of club? Maybe that's a make it or break it for you. um, Another thing that's really helpful as you narrow down your college search is once you get, maybe your top 5 choices, if they do have visitation programs that you're able to go on a campus visit, we definitely recommend making a campus visit, and checking out the area. What you see in pictures maybe doesn't match what you're going to experience on campus. So a campus visit is a really good idea. Also taking a look at that application process, making sure that you understand what the specific due dates for each college is really important. Everyone has a different, or every college has a different kind of application process, whether they're on a common app, maybe they're on an application that's specific to their university. Some are due in the fall, some are due in the spring. And so you want to make sure that as you're making this list of colleges, you're taking note of when that application is due. Um, Cost of attendance might be really important to you as you're thinking about the finances of how am I going to pay for my schooling, right? So looking at your total cost of attendance, you're going to notice that that's going to include tuition, some mandatory type fees. What does their housing options? What are those median costs or average costs? Dining costs, and then probably books. And since you are going to be an out-of-state student, hopefully you're applying to an out-of-state college, you want to take a look at what those average travel costs are too for you. And then looking at the types of scholarships that university or college offers. Some of them may have out-of-state specific scholarships, such as the WUE program. Maybe they're involved in the WUE program. And so those are things that you want to take into consideration. And then after you take into consideration all of those other things, you want to also think about, what do I want to add to my educational experience that's outside of the classroom? And those are things that students, I think, often forget about, right? So what are the types of things you want to get involved in? What are some of those activities that you want to have close by or in close proximity to you while you're on campus? So things like, are you interested in doing outdoor activities? Are you interested in having water nearby because you're really into water sports? Those are the types of things that you want to also consider after thinking about that academic experience that you are looking to have and that you desire to have.
Okay, so digging into some of the specifics. So when you hear WUE, we are not upcountry cowboys corralling cattle. It actually stands for something, the Western Undergraduate Exchange. So that's what you should be thinking when you think WUE. We're going to touch a little bit on out-of-state scholarships as well. WUE is both exceptionally simple and exceptionally complicated all at the same time. So we're going to try to walk you through that.
All right, so we tried to come up with a general list of what WUE is and what WUE is not. So the kind of the major thing we also want you to take away from this slide is that every college and university manages WUE differently, but there are some base rules to know, which is what we're going to go over. So WUE is individualized per school. Just like I mentioned, each school kind of does it in a different way. So you want to make sure that if they say, yes, we are a WUE school, ask them more about that. So can you tell me more about your WUE program and what that would look like if I were to apply to your university? All of the the WUE program is connected to the Western Interstate Commission of Higher Education, which is short or WICHE for short. The WUE scholarships typically bring a student's tuition to about 150% of what in-state tuition is. So it is not in-state tuition. It's not just because you're a WUE recipient doesn't mean that you're all of a sudden going to be paying in-state tuition for that university. So that's a really clear distinction that I think a lot of students get a little confused on. They are for public post-secondary education institutions. So that includes two-year universities and four-year universities. So those are things to remember WUE is. So again, WUE is not in-state tuition. It's not guaranteed for out-of-state students. There are requirements typically that are, again, they vary per school. It's reciprocity. So, you get something and the university gets something as well, because you as an out-of-state student will contribute to their campus culture in a different way that maybe in-state students wouldn't be able to contribute. So you'll definitely see that it's the western area of the country working together to kind of bring students from all over the area. It's not automatically necessarily, and you'll kind of see when different schools say that they're automatically awarded, there are still some requirements. And so that kind of connects back to the fact that being an out-of-state student doesn't guarantee you a WUE scholarship. There are some requirements there. They're always available to every major offered at the institution. So that's something WUE is not. That again is going to vary per institution. There will be some institutions that require you to have a certain degree, or you're interested in a certain degree program or major for you to be a WUE recipient. And so those are things that you want to double check with at the different institutions that are on that list that you're making. Residency. So Tyler mentioned this. Being a WUE recipient doesn't necessarily mean that all of a sudden you're a resident of that state. They're just trying to make sure that they get your tuition to a little bit of a lower cost, 150% of what that in-state tuition is. And it also does not mean that you're eligible at every school for, you're not, it also doesn't mean that if you qualify for a WUE program at one school, that you automatically will qualify at a different school. Because as we mentioned, they vary per school, and just because a state is counted as a WUE state doesn't mean that every school in that state is a WUE school. So private schools, for example, typically are not WUE, right? Because again, we're looking at public post-secondary institutions. So private schools are not a part of the WUE program.
So for visual learners out there, hopefully this gives you a better understanding of where WUE is possible. If you are from one of the states or territories in green and you're going to a public university in one of the other states or territories that's green, you are eligible for WUE. But again, it's really important. We're going to hit this home almost every single slide. Really important that you talk with each school to find out what limitations they may have. Both Kim and I are going to talk about our specific institutions. I've worked at 4 different WUE universities. I've worked at one where it was the first 150 students, first come, first serve, but you couldn't be majoring in 3 of the 100 or so majors they offered. I worked at one university where they claimed they were a WUE school, but you literally could only do one major, mining engineering. Always seemed a little sketchy to me that they were able to put themselves on that list, but they were a public university who offered it for that one major. At the same time, the school I'm at now, if you're from Hawaii and you're admitted, here's WUE. So it really can be extremely different from program to program, state to state schools.
Oh, did we
Are you there,
freeze
Kim?
here? I'm here. I didn't see the slide change there. Is the
Oh,
slide
no.
changed?
Yes. I'm going to stop sharing for a second and then share it again. That normally fixes the problem.
Okay. So as Tyler pulls that back up, we're basically going to give, again, for our visual learners out there who you're like, wait a minute, she said something about it not being in-state tuition and then said something about it being in-state tuition. This is just a graphic that shows in-state tuition times 1.5 equals your WUE rate. So if you go to the next slide, Tyler will talk a little bit about what that would look like in number form for, again, seeing it in a different way.
Yes, so again, let's say tuition at Public University of Wyoming is $10,000 per year. That's the in-state tuition. You're going to pay it 150%, so $15,000 per year. Now, that is typically significantly
it looks
less.
like there's, sorry, Tyler, it looks like the slide's not popping up here.
Mm-hmm. Can folks see it now?
It's looking still black. Do you want me to try?
Yes, let's try that. Sorry about that.
We're all going to learn how fun can technology be, right? All right, let's see. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and see if this works. Thank you all so much for your patience. Can you all see that?
Okay. So Kim now has control of the PowerPoint, but so again, $10,000, 150%, $15,000 per year. It's still typically a savings of about 40% over the out-of-state rate. So if a student from Massachusetts wanted to come to this fictional university, they'd probably be paying closer to $25,000. So you're still getting a savings, if not quite the in-state rate.
All right. So when you're applying for the WUE, again, you want to make sure that you understand that the WUE is, again, different for every school. There isn't a WUE application. So you aren't going to fill out, the application for the university and then expect to fill out another application for WUE. There isn't an application that's WUE specific. And again, how you get the WUE at each institution will vary per institution. So you want to ensure you understand that piece. Most or many of our WUE partner institutions will review academic merit as part of their WUE process, but again, that's individual based on each school, and you'll definitely see that as Tyler and I share how our schools assign the WUE or award the WUE is a better word to use. You want to make sure that, again, you're looking at deadlines. There are some institutions that have a WUE specific deadline. So you need to apply by this date in order to be eligible for our WUE. Or like Tyler mentioned earlier, that there are first come, first serve type of program. So you want to pay attention to not only the dates of the application, but always ask, are there any additional things I need to know if I'm wanting to be a WUE recipient at your school? And that usually will open the door to all the different additional details that you would need to remember as you want to be considered for the WUE. And again, you wanna double check if there is an additional application per school. If there is a minimum GPA. As of right now, most schools nationwide are test optional, but that may be different if you're wanting to get the WUE scholarship. So again, another good question to ask: what are the minimum GPAs? Do I need to still submit my SAT or ACT test scores to your university, even though it's test optional for admission, right? And then again, restrictions on those eligible majors. So we're really trying to hit home the things that we want you to remember as you are applying to the different schools that do have WUE programs.
So we are not here to sell you our institutions. We're going to do that later this afternoon. But we also understand our institutions best, and so wanted to give you two competing examples of how WUE and scholarships are awarded, because at the same time, many of you who may be looking at NAU are also looking at Washington State. The two universities are not completely dissimilar from each other. It wouldn't be a surprise if both ended up on your list. So NAU is quite literally as small L liberal as you can get with how we award this scholarship. Well, for us, it's a tuition rate. You're from Hawaii, you're admitted, WUE, period. No GPA minimum. You had to have a GPA minimum to be admitted to the university, of course. And if you want more information on that, come talk with me later this afternoon. but no additional minimum above and beyond the admissions requirements. No test scores. This was true for us again before COVID, but something that has become even more important. There is no second application. It is for every major, including nursing. That was not true a couple of years ago, but it is now. And it is stackable with other scholarships. So at NAU, your application is really a 2-in-1 application. It's your application for admission, but also your application for scholarships. So to be awarded the WUE Blue Scholarship, you need to have between a 3.0 and a 3.49 unweighted core GPA. That would give you an extra $5,000 a year on top of your WUE tuition discount. If you get the WUE Gold Scholarship worth an additional $6,000 per year, you need to have between a 3.0 and a 3.5 and a 4.0 unweighted core GPA. If you are awarded one of these scholarships, you are now essentially paying the same tuition as an in-state student, but it does not make you an in-state student. But even if you're not eligible for the Blue and the Gold, you're still going to be eligible for your WUE tuition discount.
All right. So at Washington State University, we too do automatic consideration for our WUE program. We have 3 different types of out-of-state student scholarships that are automatically awarded to students if their cumulative high school GPA for our freshman scholarships are met. And then for our transfer students, we also have a WUE for our transfer students. So if you're at a cumulative GPA of a 3.2 to a 3.59, you're automatically going to be awarded our Cougar Award, which is $7,000 per year for 4 years. And then if you're at a 3.6 unweighted high school GPA, on a 4.0 scale, you're automatically awarded our Distinguished Cougar Award, which is $11,000 per year for 4 years. And this Distinguished Cougar Award is what would be equivalent to that 1.5, right? In-state tuition times 1.5. This is our version of the WUE scholarship. And then for transfer students, we also offer a WUE scholarship for them. If their transferable GPA, so the GPA of their college credits, right, is at a 3.0 or higher, they are awarded the Cougar Award for transfer students, which is $11,000 per year. And this is actually for 3 years. Sorry about that typo there. This is for 3 years, not 4 years. And because we're assuming that you've already completed that 1 year at a either other institution, community college, university. So lots of really great opportunities at Washington State to help bring that tuition down. And then something I wanted to touch on is sometimes year to year, the WUE requirements at schools change. So for example, these requirements this year are actually a little different than the WUE requirements we had for last year. So this information here is for students who are applying for fall 2021. So we always encourage students to attend the presentation for the application year that they're applying. So for our juniors, sophomores, and freshmen in the room, this gives you a good idea of what our schools are looking for, but you'll always want to check back during your application year to make sure you're getting the most up-to-date information about the WUE requirements for that school. We do not have an additional application for our WUE program.
So other things to consider is that WUE is not the end-all be-all, nor should you no longer consider a university simply because they don't offer WUE. They may offer something very similar to it or even better. We touched upon some of this before. So academic scholarships, what I'm referring to here are scholarships that you're generally considered for either automatically or with a second application when you're applying to a university. Most admissions offices are going to take your your GPA, potentially test scores, and any other supplemental material they may be offering. Merit-based money. You're also going to want to look for private scholarships. These may be merit-based, they may be need-based, they might be a talent or a skill. It could be an identity that you hold, an organization that you belong to. Please talk with your high school counselors about this. They have sometimes literally still a drawer full of options for you. If you or your family are part of any religious, fraternal, or social organizations, businesses, unions, talk with them, because many of those local organizations offer scholarships, but they often do a really poor job of advertising that they have these scholarships. There are some really great scholarship search engines out there, so Google it basically. However, you should never, ever pay to access scholarship information or to apply for a scholarship. If they're asking you to do that, it's a scam. You're going to want to look for other state and local scholarships. So these kind of blended together with that idea of talk with your counselor, your high school counselor, because they're going to have some of these. You're going to want to make sure that the scholarships you're applying for are good at the universities that you're considering. So there are lots of great scholarships here in Hawaii, and some of them are only good at Hawaii schools. Some of them are going to be good for any state. So make sure you're looking at those limitations there. Sort of talked about financial aid already through the FAFSA, free application for federal student aid. Every university that uses FAFSA, which is 99.9% of them, I can only think of 2 off the top of my head that don't, so there's probably a handful of others. That application opens October 1st. But every university sets priority dates and deadlines. So for example, NAU has one of the earliest priority dates in the country, November 15th. But it's a priority date, not a deadline. We don't really have a deadline, but some money does run out. And I'll let Kim give her deadline as well as just a different example.
Yeah, so our priority deadline or our priority date for the FAFSA to be filed by is January 31st of the year you're applying. So very different for per school. All right. So, just to kind of hit some of that information home, we want to make sure that you understand that WUE is not the only way that you're going to be able to lower that cost of attendance for attending the university of your dreams, right? So it takes a diverse set of resources to pay for school. Whether you're looking at tuition waivers, maybe it is that WUE scholarship, other institutional scholarships. Like Tyler mentioned, many schools have separate scholarship applications to gain additional scholarships. And we'll talk a little bit more about how WUE can be used as a stackable scholarship for those types of institutions. Private scholarships, I definitely always encourage our students to look at locally based scholarships. So maybe of a mom and pop shop nearby or in your hometown that's also offering a scholarship. Maybe it's a $500 scholarship for 1 year. That $500 will still help you bring that cost of tuition down, right? So definitely look at private scholarships, local and nationally based scholarships. Definitely explore loans. I think that loans are definitely something that many families tend to stray away from, but they are a form of financial aid. And I want to normalize that many college students take out loans, and they need to learn about what the different requirements are for paying back that loan, typically before they're okayed for it to get dispersed to the student. So you will learn about what that repayment looks like for loans when you are taking it out, if it's through your institution. If you don't have that as a requirement, I recommend that you look into it prior to taking out that loan so you understand exactly what those terms are. Job and work study opportunities, as Tyler mentioned. Maybe some of you have a savings plan or are being gifted some college money from family or friends, right? So definitely think about what type of savings you have available to be able to put into your college education costs. Grants as well. Grants are free money that you could use to help pay for school. And then think about some other options. I have had some friends who they did a fundraising type of thing where they sold a certain type of product or something like that to help pay for school. So definitely think about your different funding options, and also think about some creative ways you're able to pay for school. I recently had one of my sorority sisters. She started an Etsy shop and now she's selling these beautiful handcrafted jewelry, and she's using that money to pay for college. So lots of different ways for you to pay there.
Okay, so some quick question and answer things just to review what we've talked about. Is WUE stackable? It depends. And it depends because every university treats WUE differently.
Yes. All right. The next one. Do I need to apply for the WUE? Again, it depends. Like we mentioned, it varies per school. Some of them have additional applications for their WUE. Some of them, they automatically consider you because it's a merit-based scholarship. It truly depends if that's a question you want to ask.
Can I use WUE for a graduate program? It depends, though really that should read No, because the program for graduate level is actually just called WICHE, the name of the overall program that we talked about before. There are similar programs to WUE at the graduate level. It gets even more complicated though, because the school that you want to go to or the program you want to attend can't be available in your home state. So it gets a little more complicated, but it is an option. So for example, no vet school in Hawaii that I'm aware of, someone correct me if I'm wrong. So you might be eligible for WICHE at one of the WUE states.
Yeah. What are the requirements for WUE? Again, as you saw, it varies per school. Both Tyler and I are large four-year institutions, and we have very different requirements for WUE, right? So it depends per school. That's something that you want to clarify at the time where you're exploring the university and are considering to apply.
Is WUE renewable? It depends. Do you like our answers? Like we said, WUE is very simple and very complicated at the same time. No matter where you go, WUE can only be good for 4 years. Now, that doesn't mean that a university, if you choose to stay for 5 years, can't give you a WUE-like scholarship, but it's not WUE. And then schools don't have to give it to you for 4 years. So Kim talked about how transfer students to Washington State can have it for 3 years. NAU, we still allow you to use it for all 4, but again, every school is different. WUE, no matter what, though, is not good for summer courses. So while we're always going to encourage you to take summer courses in order to get ahead or to stay on track, that is a different financial consideration that comes into play.
Right. So, does this change my residency? It depends. No, for real, it does not change your residency. So it does not change your residency. That was a joke. Hopefully some of you got a chuckle off of that. But WUE does not change your residency. It is only a scholarship that helps pay for your tuition or reduce that tuition.
So if you really want to deep dive into the small print of what WUE is, this is the website that you would want to go to. Hopefully we were able to answer more questions than we created. I can't even remember if we have another slide left, just a thank you slide. So we do have about 10 or 15 minutes or so left. Kim and I have been trying to answer some of your questions in the chat, but let us know what questions we have. We'll answer those out loud at this point, though, so that everyone can hear it and you don't just watch us type answers.
Yeah, so we just got a question come in the chat. Do you have a list of WUE schools with the best reputation, such as prestigious schools?
So this is hard because I would ask you to step away from the word prestigious to start. So what I can say is that every public university in those Western states on that map that we showed you before are eligible to be considered for WUE. Now, you may look at a university as a whole and be like, wow, this university is famous for all sorts of reasons. Like everyone knows about UC Berkeley, right? But if you're looking for a particular major, maybe UC Berkeley doesn't even have it, and Washington State has the best program of its kind in the country. Not to say you're not as good as UC Berkeley, I'm just using an example. So Great Berkeley may be this university that has all this space in your imagination, but going to Washington State is actually going to be a better fit for you academically. So the only list that I have is you would need to Google states in, or Google the public universities in any particular state.
Yeah, and so that's why I brought us back to this slide here. So you can take a look at which schools in that region that Tyler and I showcased earlier in our presentation, and take a look at the list of schools, and then maybe you could highlight the ones that you think are prestigious and take a look at what their WUE programs are individually per school.
So Kim, can you talk about this question, though I'll jump in as well. Can you do a study abroad or student exchange to another school from a WUE school?
That's a really good question. And I think the best way to answer that, and I know you're probably getting tired of this answer, It depends. It really depends per school and how they are applying your WUE scholarship. So at WSU, because our WUE program is more like an out-of-state student type of scholarship, where every out-of-state student who qualifies with those cumulative GPAs, or as a transfer student, that transfer GPA, it qualifies for their tuition reduction. There are some programs that they could use, or they could be a WUE student, pay that tuition, and still be eligible to travel abroad and use that type of and be an be a study abroad student during that semester. So it really depends on the institutions that you're interested in, and also sometimes it also depends on the type of study abroad program that you're interested in. So for example, the question also asked about student exchange programs to another school, for example. Sometimes that won't count, because maybe you're going to do this student exchange where it's not a student for student thing, where you're paying the other school's tuition, right? So for a student exchange, sometimes you're switching with another student and you're still enrolled technically at your institution, paying your institution's fees, and therefore you would still qualify for the WUE at WSU because you're paying WSU tuition. You're just at a different institution doing classes there. So it really depends on the situation. What I would encourage you to do is, if you apply to your school, your WUE recipient, talk to your academic advisor about, hey, I'm interested in doing the study abroad program. What type of financial aid would be available to me during those programs? So I know, again, it depends is the short answer, but I would say talk to the financial aid folks, talk to your admission counselor, talk to academic advisors if you're already at the campus.
Yeah, again, at NAU and most other universities, my answer would also be, it depends. If you are doing what we call an exchange program, so you go to the University of Glasgow in Scotland, someone from the University of Glasgow comes to NAU, you're still an NAU student, you're still paying NAU tuition using NAU scholarships and financial aid, you're just in Scotland. But there are some programs, about 30% of our programs, that are not eligible. So Semester at Sea is kind of a famous one. Phenomenal program. You spend the entire semester on a boat traveling to like 30 different countries once COVID's over. But it costs like $35,000. And that is not a cost difference NAU can afford to eat. So while we have specific study abroad scholarships to help pay off that difference, it would not be a WUE student that particular semester. So Kim, I think you have a couple of WSU specific questions there.
Yeah, so one of the questions is WSU's WUE scholarship stackable? Yes, it is stackable. At WSU, we have one general scholarship application that puts you in the running for over 700 different internal scholarships. And so you are able to apply for, or you're able to submit an application for our internal scholarships, and you are able to also bring in out or external scholarships to stack onto that WUE. But once you get, all of your scholarships that are coming in, once you get to the point where you're over the cost of tuition, maybe you get over $50,000 worth of scholarships and they're all renewable for 4 years, that's when we'll have to take a look at, how your other scholarships, what are those limitations? So if, like Tyler mentioned, they're saying it needs to be this scholarship could only be used for tuition. The WUE also is a tuition scholarship, and so it may cause some of those other scholarships to be reduced, or for you to not be eligible for that. So it is stackable, but there are some limitations depending on what the limitations are for the different scholarships that you've qualified for and are being awarded.
Great. So Miss James put in the chat another good website that we actually didn't share in our presentation, but could help you figure out what programs are good at what schools. I would say, though, and including with the websites that we have given you, websites are only as good as they are updated. And so even if you're using these various websites, please reach out to your individual universities that you're applying for. I think we have time just for one more quick question. Do you need to be a US citizen to apply for WUE? I am a US resident green card. This could actually be a little different state by state, not necessarily university by university. Arizona having some of the more stringent requirements. Even we allow US residents to get WUE, but I can't speak for all the other states because they may have a different set of laws.
Yeah, I believe WSU does, but I'm gonna definitely have to double check that fact. And we're gonna get a transcript of today's chat, so we could definitely reach out to you individually about our different schools. But that's a good question to ask the admissions officer per school that you're interested in applying to. Yeah, thank you all so much for joining us today. We had a lively chat and a lot of fun talking with you all. We are up for our time. That's what Cindy here is going to probably tell us. So go ahead, Cindy.
Thank you so much. Well, first and foremost, I just want to give a big mahalo to Kim and Tyler for sharing so much knowledge with us about this awesome program that has truly benefited so many Hawaii families over the years. So thank you, thank you. And thanks to all of you for joining us. Just a few final reminders. If you have a chance, there's going to be a very quick survey when you close out the window, just 4 questions on that survey. If you're able to answer it, that would help us if we, for future programming of this kind. Please sign up for more sessions. We have amazing college admission folks, just like Kim and Tyler, doing programs today and sharing knowledge about their schools all afternoon. So please sign up for programs today and in the future. And finally, just reminding that there'll be a recording of today's video available. You just go to strivescan.com/Hawaii and you'll see all the information available. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day and we'll see you again soon. Aloha. Bye.